Welcome to our new episode of Refugee Voices, and today we have CWS Northern California. We have quite a few guests here, and they all have wonderful experiences to share of the refugee and immigrant space, as well as their personal experiences from various countries and where they come from. So we can go one by one. You guys can introduce yourself to the audience. So, Jason, you want to start off?
Sure. My name is Jason Welle, and I'm the Community and Volunteer Engagement Program Officer here at CWS Norcal.
Okay, I'll go next. So, my name is Jasmin, and I am a post release service caseworker at CWS.
My name is Iryna, and I'm Senior Case Manager for Ukrainian community here in Northern California. So we're helping all Ukrainians who are arriving here on the United for Ukraine program.
And my name is Jodi, and I'm the director of our office.
Wonderful. And I just want to start off with Jodi because I know you've been here for a very long time and also worked in the space for quite a long time. So, just a little bit more about your organization, what you guys do, and a little story about what inspired this organization to begin and run its operations here in Northern California.
So our organization is fairly old, almost 80 years, but we've only been here in Northern California for a little bit more than a year and a half, almost 2 years. What our organization does is we welcome newcomers. And so recently what that has looked like has been welcoming Afghans, welcoming Ukrainians, providing the support that they need to integrate into the community, to settle. We also have a post-release service that supports unaccompanied minors. We have a legal department that serves with their legal needs, and we also have an anti-trafficking program. And we're expanding with school liaisons, health navigation. So basically, we're trying to provide the support that newcomers who are coming from really challenging situations and trying to resettle here with the support that they need to succeed as they resettle here. The organization, probably Jason has a better sense of how it started and when it started. He's been here longer than me, so I might pass that one on to Jason.
Yeah, so CWS was founded right in the wake of World War II. It was founded to respond to the humanitarian emergencies in first in Europe and then in Japan in the wake of World War II. It was a project that was started by 17 Christian denominations with the idea that they can do more together than they could ever do independently. The first project was called the Crop Project, and they literally got farmers across the Midwest to donate crops. They'd have these trains, these freight trains roll through farming towns. They'd have a big event, and farmers would donate food grain and seed grain, and that would be shipped over to Europe and Japan. The food grain went to people in displaced persons camps. The seed grain was to help farmers restart their livelihoods. And then once the U.S. started a formal refugee resettlement program in around 1948 or so, CWS is one of the very first organizations to sponsor refugees for resettlement here in the U.S. Today, I like to say we're still doing fundamentally the same work, just in a different scope and scale and with more information. So we are in about 30 countries around the world doing development assistance, helping families develop resilient livelihoods in their own communities with their own families. In situations where they can't stay with their own communities, for example, natural disasters or conflict or just dire economic circumstances and they're displaced people, then we support them during displacement until they can return safely home. And if that's not a possibility, then we support their safe resettlement in communities here in the U.S. So most of our history, we've been kind of in the eastern third of the country, east of the Mississippi. But with the twin emergencies in Afghanistan and Ukraine, our leadership decided it was important for us to expand our offering into California, since California has large populations of Afghans and Ukrainians.
Jason, do you mind expanding on how the early days of the organization were when expanding to Northern California? Because I'm sure it's a different community that is coming here and running operations as a newer organization,
Mm-hmm.
technically. Just how that was the transition.
Yeah, so we are definitely the scrappy upstart in the field, at least in the West Coast. We're well known in other parts of the country. We're well known in refugee circles, but in California communities, we're virtually unknown. We do have a fundraising program called the Crop Hunger Walk, which is a walk fundraising event that's been over 50 years, and that's been going on in California communities for a long time. But in terms of having direct services through CWS, we're brand new. We just opened the first California office, I guess it would have been 2 years ago this month, and that was down in Orange County, and then followed with our Walnut Creek office in May of that year. So the challenges are, other than they're logistical challenges, of course, finding the right space. Real estate's expensive in California, as we all know. That's true for commercial and residential. Hiring an entirely new staff out here who may not be familiar with CWS or its legacy, some of whom may not have directly worked in this field before. A lot of it is just name recognition because we are so new. Introducing ourselves to the community has been a big uphill battle. There are other much larger refugee resettlement organizations in the region who've been here longer, and they're well known by community groups that like to support this kind of work. So just introducing CWS Norcal as a new organization in the field has been one of the challenges we've faced.
Awesome.
So doing a lot of sort of outreach, sort of like a lot of phone calls, a lot of emailing, trying to drop in. Our core base of support for all of our history has been faith communities, especially Christian churches. So in other parts of the country, you might go into a church and say, "Hi, we're with CWS," and they'll say, "Oh, great, CWS. We know exactly who you are." That's not necessarily the case out here. So we have to do a lot of education, introducing ourselves, explaining who we are, explaining our connection to faith communities, and then just doing that over and over again.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, as I ask these questions, feel free anyone to speak up and answer because I don't know who it's going to be directed towards. But as we like talk about the organization and the communities trying to know who you guys are, how did you initially reach out to and engage with these benefiting communities here in Northern California?
So you mean the communities the client communities that we serve?
Correct.
I'll turn it over to Iryna because she was here right when we opened, and she was a big part of reaching out to client communities.
Yes. Yeah, regarding Ukrainian community, we did big work. We start with local different organization who works with Ukrainians, different Ukrainians organization who are situated here in Bay Area. So we try to have a meeting with leaders, like community leaders who has a lot of contact in community. So we set a meeting with them. We told them our stories, how we can help Ukrainians. And it worked a lot. And of course, I think the big step in our engagement was social media because Ukrainians are like super active in Facebook, Instagram, and different types of social media. So we were trying to spread the information about us in different local groups. Because there's a lot of local groups of Facebook of Ukrainians who are trying to communicate between each other and sharing their experience, where they find a job, where they find any help here in Bay Area. So that's why we're always posting some different information, what we are doing, how we can help you. You always can reach out to us. And after some people who already work with us, they start to spread the word between friends, between families, between new arrivals who start to arrive there. We had a good reputation among them. So that's why the information start to spread like more quickly, and we get a lot of new clients coming to our office.
And I would say that was very similar with the Afghan community too. So going out to the Afghan Coalition, which is a huge Afghan organization in the East Bay, going to local mosques and just sort of getting the word out there. And once word got out, it was shared by mouth. And then it's a little different though for the unaccompanied minors. Jasmin, do you want to talk a little bit about how youth come in? How do you get a case that you work with?
Yeah, so for us it's a little bit different because in my department for HSPRS, we can't just go out and get our own clientele. We have to get get a case assigned to us. Basically, once they're released out from federal care, which is the ORR office, Office of Refugee Resettlement, and go out to live with their sponsors. And a sponsor can vary from a family friend to anybody like a mom or a dad. Then that's when we get assigned a case, and that's like random, so we have no control over what cases we're going to get or where we're going to travel to. It's pretty just I wake up and I get a case. So it's very different as well from how Iryna does hers.
And speaking on unaccompanied minors, um, Jodi, I know you worked with unaccompanied minors for a while with the Catholic Charities of Santa Clara County and also in Colorado. So, how are their experiences and needs different than the other refugee communities that you see?
Well, I think even within unaccompanied minors, you have unaccompanied refugee minors who are coming through a similar process as refugees. So when they arrive in the US, they have status, legal status. The unaccompanied minors that we are working with are the ones that are crossing the border. They're detained, they're placed in a federally funded shelter, and then they're released to a sponsor. So the differences between someone who has legal status and someone who does not have legal status is huge. And that's true across all of our populations, whether that be those coming from Afghanistan, Ukraine. We do have some that are coming with legal status going through the refugee pipeline. We also have folks that are crossing the border and showing up at our office because they don't know where else to go. So I think that's the biggest difference, is if they have legal status or not. That plays a huge role in what benefits they're eligible for. Do they have a work permit? Can they get a job? Or are they completely dependent, like asylum seekers as well, come here and apply for status, but it's a very long process of waiting. And in that meantime, they don't get a work permit right away. They're not eligible for benefits. And so it's really challenging. They're really limited, even though they come here, most of them, to work and to find a better life for themselves. There's so many barriers to doing that. So I mean, that's what our team is here for. We help the ones that we can. And we also have our limitations based on our own funding. A lot of our funding is from the federal government with pretty clear parameters on who we can serve. So I think that would be the main difference.
Hmm. And when the people are looking for or waiting for their work permits, generally what is going on in like the behind the scenes? Like, are they able to still live like comfortably, or what are the processes for their livelihood?
So for someone who's an asylum seeker or who doesn't have status when they arrive,
Hmm.
um, it depends on who their community is, really. I think if they've come here and they know somebody that is here to help them, often that person will house them, they'll help them get on their feet. But a lot of people come with no community, and it's really, really challenging. And I might pass that on to Iryna also to talk about, because I'm sure you've had some folks that you've supported who have come without legal status.
Many Ukrainians, most of them arriving on the United for Ukraine program, so they all have documents and they have employment authorization document. They arrive here and they applied with. We have a big legal team here in our office who helping them to apply for their EAD. So for them, it's take. I mean, months, maybe less, maybe more, like to get a work permit, and they can start officially work. So it's a big plus for them.
And for those who, Jasmin, that you're supporting, say the sponsors, what is it like for them?
Yeah, well, for me in my cases, the sponsors are supporting the minors. I work with all minors, so they can't work. So they're being fully supported by the sponsors. And in order for them to become a sponsor, they go through a lot of background checks, and it's a lot of documents, and they do check pay stubs and all that. So they do have to qualify to be a sponsor and have certain income to be able to afford taking care of a new person entering basically their family. So most of the sponsors are working and have work permits. So it's not really a worry that I have to work with unless I can see that they're not being provided food or all of that. But most of them are working and they're pretty secure in being able to take care of my minors.
All right. And for like recent purposes, what kind of new initiatives or projects has CWS Norcal been working on to expand their reach and really establish themselves in this new environment in Northern California?
Well, I think since we're so new, everything is a new initiative. I would say our most recent new initiative is to start our reception and placement program, which is where we take in new arrivals and support them within their first 90 days. And as Jason mentioned, there are other resettlement agencies in the Bay Area who have been doing this for a long time. But that is our newest initiative, and we are starting this week with our first arrival on Friday. We're trying to accept as many as we can before January 20th, the inauguration. We don't know what's going to happen after that, if the pipeline will still flow or not. So we are bracing ourselves to support as many as we can. So that would be our biggest new initiative. It may be short-lived, but we will do what we can.
And the difference with that and the other programs we currently have is that, for example, our Afghan and Ukrainian clients they've already arrived in the U.S. through other means, like the United for Ukraine program or the Operation Allies Welcome, which were both programs passed by Congress to expedite entry for people from Ukraine and Afghanistan. So the difference between those and this new reception and placement program is that the RMP clients could be from anywhere. I think in our first scheduled arrivals, we have people from Afghanistan, but also from Nicaragua,
Venezuela,
Senegal. So,
Republic of the Congo.
And we're doing everything from setting up their apartment and then making sure it has food and a hot meal for them when they arrive, and then picking them up at the airport, and then accompanying them for 90 days to begin their integration into their new life here as our neighbors.
Mm-hmm. And speaking on that, like with the changes obviously coming up with the new election, how do you see your operations changing and what your goals really are? As much as you can answer, obviously.
Well, our goals remain the same, is to serve newcomers and provide them with the support that they need. We don't really know what's going to happen after January 20th. We have some sense of what might happen because of the first Trump administration. We're not sure about funding past this next federal fiscal year. There's a lot up in the air. We don't know if programs are going to stay open or if they're going to shut down, if there will be funding, if there won't be funding. Fortunately, in the state of California, there's additional support from our state. So we may be able to continue serving others through different sources of funding, but it does have a huge impact on us and on the clients that we serve. There will be different eligibility requirements. We've already seen that, where folks who are coming from Ukraine right now don't have the same benefits and eligibility as the ones that we have been able to serve. So really, it's a big question mark for all of us.
Mm-hmm. All right. And I want to transition a bit to hear more personal experiences from each of you. So, Iryna, I know you work with Ukrainians, and in 2014 was when Russia invaded and annexed Crimea, and in April, pro-Russia separatist rebels they began seizing eastern Ukraine. So, at this time, I know it's a while ago, but how did you kind of transition to your work in with Ukrainian refugees, and also really what your process was during this time?
Well, when big invasion started in February 2022. I was working in the Consulate General here in San Francisco, and we were helping. It was a big amount of people who were trying to escape the war because they were afraid of their lives. In that moment, there was not any program who allowed them officially enter the United States. That's why they all arrived to Mexican border, and they will try to get through the Mexican border to United States. That's why a lot of different organizations, all Ukrainian community leaders, representatives were on the Mexican border and helping Ukrainians because there was they were standing days and days on that border, mother with kids, without any food, without any water. That's why they will need help to build any camps and provide any food, like any things that can help them to survive these days on that borders. That's why we were working with these people, and I was looking for any other opportunity how I can help more Ukrainians. That's why I found this job. I found the position. There was like a case manager for Ukrainians, and I read the job description, how we can help them. There was more opportunities and responsibilities, how we can help different projects, different programs. That's why I applied for the job. And after that, we start like work directly with Ukrainians here, Ukrainians family, most of them like a single woman who are coming here with small kids on their hands. So for me, the main task was to help them because it was my country, and all my relatives and friends were in Ukraine when the war started. I remember that night when I read the news and I see the war started, and I was calling my mom and saying like, "Mom, wake up! Like war started," and everyone was, "What war? Oh, don't tell me this. I want to sleep," because it was night, 5 a.m. in Ukraine, and here in the United States it was like evening, 7 p.m. That's why we were not sleeping, and it was, I think, the worst evening in my life to call your relatives and tell, like, wake up, the war started. That's why I felt the pain of all Ukrainian people and population who are arriving here and who are who want to save their lives and the lives of their children. That's why I had a big desire and willing to help them.
And when this time was occurring in 2022, how was the transition for the people there? Was it very rushed and they had to immediately find ways to escape, or were there enough aid and supply? Like, how was their experience, managing that situation?
It was shocking because everyone heard that something may happen, like something big is going to happen, but a lot of people didn't believe that it actually would happen because like 21st century, everyone is going to space. There is like different innovation. There are a lot of things happening in the world. So no one even could imagine that the war will happen. The real war, the war that our grandparents, I remember my grandmother would always told me about Second World War. Like, oh my God, it was so long ago. Like, nothing will happen anymore in this world. Like, forget about this. That's why I think a lot of people were shocked that this actually happened. That actually, like, rockets are flying under their houses, and people were trying to escape, like from all the Ukraine. There was a big chaos because everyone was trying to save their families, their lives. Some were just like hoping to sit like a few weeks at home and like everything will end in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, like everything will be good, don't worry, because no one had any information when it will end. That's why some people were like trying to find any way to get out from Ukraine, but a lot of people were just sitting at home, not going outside and waiting like, okay, I think 2 weeks and everything will be okay. But it didn't happen. It's like already a third year. The real war is happening across all the country and there is no like safe place. Even if you're in the west or in the east or in the central Ukraine, you never know when the rocket will come to your house because sometimes they're pulling in the east. Of course, the most dangerous part of Ukraine is east of Ukraine and like south of Ukraine. But you see all these drones and rockets every day. Like every day, some family people are dying. Like today, we had I think it's Mykolaiv, where the girl, 10 years girl, died because the rocket came to their house. Like they were sleeping at night, and they killed this kid. Yesterday it was family of three. Like only husband who survived, the mother and two kids were killed. The day before, also another family was killed. Like every day, people are killed by Russia.
Yeah, it's definitely very devastating what's going on, and when the refugees they come to different countries like United States, we see a lot of mental trauma that comes along with it, and a lot of organizations they try their best to provide aid and provide um, like educational resources or more legal services, and while all of that will help, a lot of that mental trauma will still be with them. Um, is that something you've noticed with the people you've worked with, and how have you or the organization kind of catered their services for mental health?
We have like some list of providers who are providing like free psychological support for refugees. That's why we're always sharing this information with them. Also, we are trying to organize a group activity for Ukrainians. It's art therapy. We already found some volunteers who will provide these group activities for Ukrainians. So I think in January we will start this group activity. The people will come to our office and just a little bit to have this therapy. Also, we have a lot of online resources for them. So we always see the people who are really came from, like we had some family from Mariupol, their house was destroyed, their friends were killed, and they come here and keep telling the stories. And I see that for sure they need this help because they're starting to cry. They cannot like even speak sometimes. That's why we're always trying to think what to say to them, how to provide this information very carefully, and provide with all services they need.
I want to transition a little bit to how education was for a lot of not only Ukrainian refugees, but also just refugees and immigrants that come to schools and join public schools. A lot of children with single mothers and who don't have such a comfortable home to go back to. Um, Jodi, you've worked in Oakland for Oakland schools, and probably if anyone else has also, how has the experience for these students been like trying to assimilate with the rest of the students, the culture, and also the educational transition from some countries where education for girls is not allowed or something, and it's a new experience for those who come here for education. So Jodi and anyone else, how has that? How have you seen that transition for those people?
I think the transition really depends on the school district. Oakland Unified happens to have a really robust newcomer team with social workers in schools, with special enrollment folks. And so there is a lot of support, there's interpretation. A lot of the students are placed with kids who come from the same country. There's an international high school in Oakland. So I think Oakland is a bit unique. We come out here to Contra Costa County or other school districts where there haven't been a steady stream of newcomers for a while. And it's really challenging. I think even just enrolling kids in school, school districts don't really understand sometimes that they don't have transcripts, they don't have paperwork, they had to leave everything. And so there's a lot of work and advocacy done just to get a kid enrolled in school, let alone to support them when they're in school. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in some of our school districts to support these kids. If they don't have the language or if the parent doesn't have kind of English speaking capacity, then how can we get interpreters for them? How can we explain what the school system looks like here? How can we connect these kids to someone else who maybe comes from the same place as them? So it just really depends. I've seen the gamut of kids who really just slide in pretty quickly because they have that support, and others who really, really struggle because there isn't that school wide support for them.
Yeah, I can add on a little bit to that as well because I work with minors who need to go to school by law. So I've seen my Oakland ones very easily get into school, and then I have some where we receive a lot of pushback, and it's sad because they want to go to school. I do have kids that are like, I want to learn. I came here to learn. I want to go to school, make friends, um, and they have a hard time getting enrolled in school. I've had a experience in Texas where I tried to enroll brothers in school, and it was what I got was, well, why don't they just go back to their country as a response because they couldn't get enrolled in school because they weren't living with a parent. Um, so I've received a lot of pushback in different states, in different school districts. Um, and it's sad to see, but also when they are enrolled in school, a big challenge for them is the language barrier and getting their um, homework and classwork done because then their grades are not as good and they can't make friends as easily as they thought because they thought it was going to be students who are also speaking the same language as them and it's not. So I always do encourage them to also and look for an ELL class or an ESL class and speak to school counselors as well to get them a tablet or something for translating services. Yeah.
Mhm. And with your when you were working in Texas, do you want to expand a little bit on what exactly your role entails with the refugees or immigrants that you work with there?
In Texas? Yeah, I mean, I've had one, it was like one case in Texas. Um, but what really helps me getting the boys in school was the school liaison. Um, and it was just a lot of back and forth. And you can just imagine like the time change and then like trying to connect with them. They're like calling me at 6 in the morning, 5 in the morning, but for them it's like 7 a.m. school time. So they're like, hey, call me, like I need this. Or like Jodi said, sometimes they don't have all the documents with them. So their school's asking for an ID or some identification that has certain information on it. Oh, they don't have that. Oh, well, their birth certificate. They don't have a birth certificate with them. Oh, do you have anything, any identification that confirms this or that? They don't have anything with them. Oh, what about their old school records? They don't have their old school records. They didn't go to school. It's really hard sometimes, and and when the schools they don't see how hard it is because they're not used to it. Um, it's kind of my responsibility and my job to step in and explain to them this is why they don't have it. Um, I know the McKinney-Vento Act and they should qualify. So I've had to stay on the phone and really just break it down to them and tell them why they qualify and why they have the right to a education. So it is somewhat rewarding at the end when they are in school.
Definitely. And I've even heard stories from sorry, okay. I've even heard stories from like other organizations where they worked with um, the parents trying to enroll their children into school, and some, like for one story I've heard in particular was a dad who said that he doesn't want to send his daughter to school because in their culture girls don't go to school, and so coming into this new country, the organization, they had to convince the parents that it's a law, it's required, you have to send all of your kids to school. And it's really important, and I'm sure like in some cases people don't get the correct attention, or some schools don't provide that specific attention towards the students. And I'm from Contra Costa County, so I definitely do see like a little lack of education towards the communities of refugees and immigrants, it's really the same as everyone else. And some teachers, they're not as like particular when it comes to these students. They don't really provide that specific detail and attention towards them. So I think that's one of the most important things, and that's what your organization does. So really thank you guys for that, for sure. Um, we can transition a bit more. So Jason, you've obviously know a lot about Church World Service and the organization and its operations. Um, so how is your organization doing different work than the other organizations in Northern California that, you know, your potential clients or people that you want to serve can really use your services, especially because it's new and it's still at its early stages?
So what I think the thing that makes CWS as a whole unique is that we are working in sort of every step on a refugee's journey, on a potential refugee's journey, right? So we are helping people find resilient livelihoods with their own communities first. And then when that can't happen, we're helping them during displacement. And if they can't go back home, then we're helping them in their resettlement. So one of the things I think just makes us unique as an organization is just that we're everywhere along that journey. Um, and that gives us a certain, I guess, organizational memory and experience to understand the cultural needs of people, the sensitivities that are needed. Um, I think in our case in particular, because we are a newer, smaller office, it gives us a little bit of nimbleness and flexibility. Um, Much more larger and well-established organizations may not quite have that kind of nimbleness. We have a small team. We all know each other really well. We can support each other in ways that maybe larger organizations can't. So right now, in fact, with the refugee reception and placement program happening, it's really an all hands on deck operation. So their job may be working in a particular role, but everyone's going to help out with this program. We're all going to collaborate together to make sure that we can provide a great welcome for the newcomers that are coming in. I think also organizationally, we've done a really good job in terms of financials, in terms of like making sure that as people give money to us, for example, that a lot of that money is going towards programs and not towards management. That's, I think, something that's really been a plus for CWS over the years. We have 4 stars on Charity Navigator, which is a really positive thing. It's not a perfect, Charity Navigator itself is a nonprofit that rates nonprofits, but we get 4 stars by their ranking, and I think that's a really positive thing. There's just a few things. Yeah, Jodi, what do you think?
Can you repeat the question all up? Sorry.
No worries. So I think Jason answered this very well, but what really is the unique services that CWS provides, especially because it is a newer organization in Northern California,
Yeah.
and what could clients like come to you for?
I would, I guess, also say more on the collaborative piece. I would say that the services that we provide are similar to what other resettlement agencies are providing. Case management for newcomers, reception and placement. There's other organizations that are doing unaccompanied minors. I think one thing that makes us unique is that we have a lot of those under the same roof, especially with our immigration legal services and our anti-trafficking. We know that our unaccompanied minors are very vulnerable to trafficking. We know that some of our newer arrivals are also vulnerable to human trafficking. And so rather than having to refer those folks out for services elsewhere, we're trying to figure out a way that we can work together to provide those in-house. And I think the other thing that Jason said is, we do have the flexibility to start new programs if we can get more funding. There's some creativity that we can have depending on what the needs are in the communities that we're seeing. Yeah. I think Iryna's example of the groups is a great one. Yeah, there is a need for people who are isolated, who are struggling through these same traumatic experiences, just to come together, have an activity together where they can form some of those supportive relationships.
Yeah, and just in the programs that we have started, for example, we started out just working with the unaccompanied children with Afghan and Ukrainian clients. That was really just how we started. Well, we realized there was a there was a need for services for survivors of trafficking. So we applied for grants and we started up that trafficking program that goes really well with not just the unaccompanied children program, but with anyone who comes here as an immigrant who might be vulnerable to that situation. So in the same house, we have support, intensive case management support for survivors of trafficking. And then we also found, like we were just talking about, the schools issue was another issue. So we now have 2 school liaison officers who are dedicated people who can help people enroll in school. So that kind of flexibility and nimbleness under the same roof, I think, makes us a unique operation.
Definitely. And, as we wrap up this episode, what are some final ways or final comments on how the public can advocate for the cause and also for your organization and to contribute to what you guys do in Northern California?
I feel like education could be a good one, educating others, because when I talk to these families, they don't know as much as we do. And I mean, like, anything from education and how to enroll a minor to just the simple laws, the basic laws. Access to Medi-Cal here in California. I know not every state has that health insurance, but luckily in California we do. And there's so many people who don't even know that they can qualify for that as an immigrant. And the amount of people I've signed up for Medi-Cal is like more than half. So just educating them about the basic rights and the basic simple laws is a good way to spread help. And you don't even have to be a caseworker.
Is there anyone else? I think someone else was also.
I guess I would just say for the general public, there's a lot of rhetoric out there that is very anti-immigrant. And, we have experience with newcomers. We know how resilient they are. And so I think one of the things I would encourage folks to do is, if you feel like you are wanting to learn more, we would be happy to share more about newcomers' experiences. There are plenty of volunteer opportunities to come alongside some of our newcomers. And I think that's actually the most life-changing thing, is if you get to know somebody who's walked this path, you walk away as a different person. And that's part of what keeps me grounded in this work, is the folks that we serve are so resilient. And they inspire me with how they just keep going despite all of the challenges they've faced. So that would be my biggest plug, is just to get to know someone, an immigrant, a refugee, an unaccompanied minor. It's very different reading about them, reading stories, following policies. I think it really changes when you get to know somebody.
Yep, I definitely agree. And that's why, the Refugee Voices, we do bring on quite a few refugees and immigrants as well, just to really talk about their emotions and their perspective through their journeys. And just reading about a story is definitely inspiring, but hearing from their own words with their tone of voice, and that's really what inspires people. And that's really our goal with the podcast. And I'm happy that we were able to share what you guys had in your organization and your experiences. If there are any other final comments.
Also, I want to agree with Jodi. It's like I think all our stories of our clients are successful stories, because people are coming here and they are starting everything from scratch, like from zero. For example, like in Ukraine, they had jobs, they have a great position, they were doctors, teachers, they had their own business, but in one day everything was destroyed, and they come here and they found this inspiration to start everything from zero. Someone started their own business here too. Someone opened a bakery. Someone opened their own kindergarten for kids. Someone also looking for any other opportunities just to not only support themselves and their families, but also bring some benefits to the community here, to the local community, to people who are living here. And that's a really inspiring stories, and that's why we are doing our best to help them and support them on their way here.
100%. I definitely agree. And good luck to the rest of your operations at CWS Norcal. And thank you for the viewers for listening. Please reach out if you have any questions and want to talk specifically about anyone or to anyone. Otherwise, that's all we have for today. Thank you.
Thank you.